Welcome to the Sophia Chang Show. Hello, parents who are like my age now, which really freaks me out. I was going to make this a podcast for people trying to get into Harvard because that's actually one of my most popular podcasts. And I was going to direct it towards people applying like I had 10 years ago when I first wrote that Quora answer. But I realized that by the time kids are old enough to be hearing this podcast, by the time kids are old enough to be working with me, either as a tutor or as a college coach, it's too late. I have to get to the parents first when the kids are only 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe up to 9. After that point, it's too late. And this is why the landscape, particularly the American educational landscape, has changed so terribly in the last 2 decades since I've been in private education, that there is one thing that's no longer being taught that is going to destroy your kids' chances at getting into a school they deserve to go to, that's going to destroy even their just enjoyment of life in general, their ability to think. And it is just one thing. You have to teach them how to read. About 5 to 7 years ago, I noticed something happening, and it's been getting worse in the last few years. I noticed this in my actual work with students, but I also noticed this online, on social media. I noticed this on Goodreads. I noticed this anywhere that reading was required, and that is this. People don't understand books anymore. They don't understand anything they read. Even students who were incredible, there's some students that I've worked with for years and years. They came to me when they were still in middle school, and I got to watch them grow. I got to be a part of that whole experience with the family, and they were just like, shot out of a cannon. Like when they were in middle school, they loved to read. They were voracious. They could consume and hoover books like nobody's business. And they definitely read faster than I could. But then something started happening as they got older. They not only started to dislike reading, and I don't blame them. A lot of the, books being taught in high schools are very dry. There were many times, because anytime a kid reads a book, I have to read along with them. So I'm basically forced to take high school over and over and over again. If anyone wants to know what it's like to have my job, it's like being stuck in some of your favorite classes and some of your worst classes over and over, like this recurring dream or nightmare. You never know, depending on what school and what teacher the student gets, is what school and teacher and curriculum you get. So, I have to reread these books with them. And a lot of times I'm reading books that I haven't even read. I wasn't taught growing. I went to just a regular public school. It wasn't a terrible public school. It wasn't a top public school. It is what it was. So, I didn't really have the huge breadth of classics, but over the last many years of teaching, I've now been forced to read classics I don't want to read. They're not fun, but I'm still able to get stuff out of them. I can still see why they're chosen. I'm still able to see why, okay, maybe this author is a really good writer, right? There's things that I can get out of it. Is it because, right, this is my specialty, this is what I'm actually good at? Sure. We all have innate propensities towards things. This is why I don't tutor science, for instance. But with that said, though, there's something about reading, right, that's different from the STEM skills. you don't really need to kind of understand how fiber optics work in order to successfully sign up for a telephone. Nobody has landline anymore. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? But you do need to know how to read in order to survive, in order to think critically and to not get taken in by whatever opposing political news anchor you see, for instance. And I say opposing because I've clearly had students on both sides of the line, although more on one side than the other. You can probably guess which. But, you don't want your kid to get taken in, right, by the politician that you don't support. Just something really simple like that. I don't know. I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall here. All I'm saying is you need to have these critical reading skills, not just to get into a good school so that you can get a good job, but you can't even get to that good job. You can't even get to that stage. You can't get to that interview stage. You're going to sound like you have no idea what you're talking about. You're going to sound like you can't think on your feet. You're not going to be able to. And then when you start your job, you can't even do your job because you're just I don't get it. It takes you 10 years, right, to get it explained to you. Why is this happening? Why are kids hating reading who used to love reading? Why are they not understanding what they're reading? Why are they not able to get into a school you'd think they would, given that, hey, your kid is bright? Why are they not getting into any of these schools? Why, once they leave the schools, is the jobs market so hard for them? They can get the job because right now it's so easy for a Zoomer to get a job right now. But why are they not able to perform at the job or get the job or even enjoy the job? What is going on right now? And it's all coming down to this. And this horrifies me. They're not teaching kids how to read in school, and kids are getting to the age of 9 and they have barely any reading ability. It's one of the most chilling things I learned. I didn't realize that this was how far back it was coming because, I don't get a kid until middle school, usually high school, usually let the scrambling at the last minute help my kid get into school, get into college. And by that time, it's way too late. I didn't realize where all this was coming from until I heard this documentary from American Public Media, which is the second largest producer and distributor of public radio programs in the United States after NPR. I'll drop a link to this really well done document. I love public radio. It was something that I wanted to go into when I I did a little bit of journalism school, and radio was my absolute favorite. It's no wonder that I'm podcasting now, right? So yeah, people who love the sound of their own voices. But are not legit enough to actually have a radio show, go into podcasting. So let's just all be honest here. But back to this very grave and serious matter. No, according to the studies, they found that 65% of fourth graders in the United States are not proficient at reading, and they actually show samples of what it's like. And when I hear it, I'm just I'm not surprised. I already feel like America should just be downgraded from first world country to last world country, because we have, we've got terrible water quality in so many places. We had zero reading comprehension already. Now we have zero reading to begin with. I don't even know anymore. Short of just telling parents to just move to a different country, the only other thing you can do to counteract this epidemic is to take matters into your own hands, because public schools, a lot of them are not going to be there for you. That's the stark reality, and it sucks. It sucks because now we have a huge economic disparity. If you have the money, you better get a tutor. Or if you have the time, you better do this on your own. If you happen to be a teacher, there are there are moms who are teachers who are doing it on their own, and they have to, because they don't have a choice. They want their kids to read. And so do I. I think reading is amazing. You know, I'm a writer. Of course I want your kids to read so they'll read my books, and I want you to read so you'll read my books. But you already know how to read. We grew up in a time when they taught us properly. They taught us how to sound the words out. They don't do that anymore. And that domino effect is, you're really going to see that in an exponential amount as your child gets older, as your child becomes ready to go to college. They're actually not going to be ready, not in the way that they need to be to stand out, not in the way that they need to be to have a good life even. So I think that's all I can say right now for the parents is it's going to start with you guys really early. If you've got young kids, great. You're catching it in time. You need to double check to see how they're doing with their reading. And if they're doing well, maybe drop me a line. Let me know what school they go to. I can tell everyone to move to your neighborhood. I don't know. You probably don't want an influx of randos, but if they're not doing well, and I also want to know where. Tell me where you are. Where are these areas where they're teaching it right and they're not teaching it right? You can leave a message through Anchor directly, an audio message. I'll drop a link for that in the show notes. I am reopening Wise Child coaching on a case-by-case basis, so you can always drop me a line there as well. Would love to hear your experiences with this serious reading catastrophe that's going on. But if there's one thing that you can do to prep your child for success in both life and college, that is making sure that they are learning to read early, properly, and because the easier a time they have reading, the more they're going to love it. And the more they love it, the more they're going to get it, the more critically they can think. It's just all right. You're going to have a wonderful, well-rounded person. I can't thank you enough for listening to this, and I am especially overwhelmed with gratitude for those of you who've actually written me amazing emails. You really went out of your way to track me down. That was not easy. That meant the world to me. This is really for you, since no one else is actually listening to this. And if any of it at all made you feel less alone, or like you could relate to something, or at least it just gave you a laugh for 5 seconds out of our otherwise difficult lives, I would so appreciate if you could help me by giving a 5-star review on iTunes, if you could share this episode or any other one with your friends. I'm on 9 different platforms, so I'd love for you to subscribe. There will be more content coming up in the future very soon. Thanks so much for sticking with me.